Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint the innards and the open wounds on a Poxbringer. Now the same technique can be used on any Nurgle miniatures, so it is a handy one to know. First colour that I'm going to use is Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to use this to paint the inside of the stomach cavity. I'm also going to use it to paint all the open wounds on him, so the bits on his arm, the end of his tongue, around his mouth, all the little sores and things like that on his body. Now between this clip and the next clip, there's a section where I've used pink horror to paint the intestines, but failed to add it to this video, which is frustrating. So once you've finished this layer with the Mephiston Red, you then want to get your pink horror and paint up all the intestines using that. We'll skip by this part and then we'll come back when all that's done. So next up is Citadel Xereus Purple. I'm just using this to paint the organ on the inside of the stomach. Obviously if there's more than one organ on show or anything like that, you can paint them all different colours to give that a bit of a variety, but you want to keep it sort of like reds and purples and maybe the odd beige and things like that too. I'm using Citadel Carroburg Crimson to paint all the insides which are outside. I've actually used Citadel Druchii Violet to paint the normal wounds and the inside of the stomach cavity. If you don't have Druchii Violet, the Carroburg Crimson is a very close second because it is very dark. It might not be quite as dark when it gets into the deeper recesses, but it'll work fine if you want to paint the Mephiston Red with Carroburg Crimson instead of Druchii Violet. Either will work. Like so. Now we're going to be reapplying the pink horror from Citadel. So what we're trying to do here is get the pink on the top of all the lumps and bumps on each intestine, and also on the underside of any little holes or tears in the intestine, so it looks as though the bottom edge is catching the light. Now just from doing it in this way, you'll be able to start seeing the detail in the intestines coming out to the fore, so you can see exactly what's going on with them. They are, for something so small in the model, really detailed. Just want to make sure all of those parts are covered. Doesn't matter how far you go into the stomach cavity, to be honest. You can go in only a little bit and it still looks fine because it's all in the shade in there anyway, so it would block the light. Like so. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Emperor's Children. We're just going to highlight all of those raised areas that we've just highlighted with the pink horror. So you're probably covering about maybe between 30 and 50% of the area that you've just put the pink horror on. Just give that a nice highlight and bring out all those details. You can see there really is a lot of detail in these areas, so just take your time to pick them all out. Really, is it worth it for the end effect, just taking your time and getting them all spot on. Now we'll move on to the next layer. So now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Xereus Purple. We're going to reapply the colour to the organ inside there. Now it's a very quick layer this, so it shouldn't take very long at all to do. Now we're moving on to Citadel Mephiston Red. We're just getting this colour, applying it back onto all the raised areas in the stomach cavity, in the open wounds, and also adding a little bit of colour to any of the tears in his flesh. It doesn't have to be 100% neat when you're putting this layer on. It can be a bit more slapdash because the overall effect of the colour of the torn skin and the insides of it and things like that, it doesn't have to be 100% smooth, so there's not too much to worry about when you're applying this. As long as you're getting the raised areas highlighted again, that's fine. You just leave the Druchii Violet or the Carroburg Crimson in the recesses, and then you'll have that contrast from the dark areas to the lighter areas. Like so. I'll speed this bit up because there's quite a bit that we're painting in this section. Like so. Now we've got the base colours back in, we're going to return to Citadel Carroburg Crimson. And what we're doing here is we're going to be using this for basically any little runs of blood and gore that may have been leaking out of the wounds on his stomach or dripping down from the burst pustules or any of the wounds on his flesh. All you want to be doing is making sure that you got trickles of blood from these areas. Now when you're painting these on, you want to think about how, if he's stood still or he's shambling forward, how that blood would run down him. So it's going to go into the creases in his leg and it's going to run down and around any bumps on his leg too. To be honest, if you wanted to, you could go really overboard with this and do it over the lumps as well, because the size of some of the wounds and the areas that he's got torn skin, there's going to be a lot of blood and there's going to be a lot of gore on the model. So you can see how these runs are going to be coming down from each of the burst pox there. Now it's the same kind of effect that I did on the poxwalkers and the plaguebearers originally. So you probably have seen this before. I thought I'd do a slightly different and updated video, probably with better sound quality than the original as well. The reason doing the blood in a couple of different directions around his fingers there and down towards the bottoms of his fingers rather than running sideways down his hand, it's just because as he's walking he's probably carrying a sword, swinging it by his side, so the blood's going to run more down the fingers. Also wanted to think about where the blood is going to be running from his stomach cavity as well. There's probably going to be a lot of old, quite foul and putrid gore running from there and down his legs, so I'll be adding some to that as well. Here man, a bit of gore running down from where his arm would be flapping against the side if his arm was by his side. Now I'm doing it more as little streaks here rather than it would just be completely coated and splattered, I think. So I've toned it down a little bit, just so you keep some of that nice skin colour showing through there. And here I'm just using a tiny little bit of the Carroburg Crimson just to go around the edge of the skin, so you've got the blood trickles coming off that and running down his arm. Here I'm just using a very little slight bit of Carroburg Crimson around the edge of the wound, just to make that a little bit more of a vivid, angry red, to show the infection that would be in there. As I say, you can add as much or as little gore as you want to this, because the nature of it, wherever that left arm's going, there's going to be a lot of gore getting rubbed against the skin on his side and running all down his hand, because the skin is literally just hanging off his arm there. So now we're going to go on to using a little bit of Vallejo Red Wash. I'm just going to be using this to go around each of the pustules. Now the reason I use this over the Carroburg Crimson is it gives a nice, more subtle kind of red effect around each of the pustules. If you use the Carroburg Crimson, it is very, very dark. You have to be really, really careful not to put too much of it on there. With the Vallejo Red Wash, it's a lot lighter in colour, so that when you put that on, it just makes a nice little red area. So this area is a little bit inflamed. So once you've got each of these pustules done, we can move on to the next part. So now we're going to be using some Citadel Rocks shade. We're going to be using this just to dirty up those insides a little bit as well. So we're going to make some thin brown streaks coming from the tears in the intestines there. So just adding this to the area around where the intestines are coming to an end here. Just because they've been dragging through the floor, dragging through the soil and the rot that he's been creating as he walks along. So you want them to be a little bit dirtier than the rest of the intestines. So now we're going to use Citadel Blood for the Blood God. We're going to be applying this to the innards as they're hanging out there, so you can use this on pretty much all of the inside of the stomach cavity there. I'm going to make sure that you're leaving some of the bits of Mephiston Red showing through. You can add it quite liberally inside. When you're doing the innards themselves, because they always seem to look quite smooth and the blood doesn't just cling to them so they're all red, you want to apply the Blood for the Blood God so it's quite streaky going down the intestines as they're hanging out there, so that it's not 100% red. You just want the streaks of the red going down. Just choose a few little areas, add a little bit of it to that, and I think it looks a lot better than maybe just streaking the whole thing red. You can also add little bits of this to the pustules as well if you want to have them looking a bit more fresh. The blood for the blood god is great paint because it has that gloss finish to it, so that wherever you apply it, if it's to a pustule or an open wound or anything like that, or applying it to a blade of some sort, it is nice and fresh, it looks shiny. So it's a good effect that you can use if you want to make them look as though they are still weeping blood. So speeding up while we do the rest of this. This is just doing exactly the same techniques that we use for the stomach cavity, using this on the arm here. You'll be able to see on the flat surface of the arm here how this looks once it's all finished. It gives it a really raw and fresh look to it, which is pretty hideous. A few little bits in the soil behind them as though the blood has been left dripping behind as he's been walking along. Like so. Next up, we're just going to use a little bit of Citadel gloss varnish, and all we're using this for is to do the intestines themselves, to give them a shine, as though they may not be slick with blood, but they are a bit slick and moist in there, so you want that shine, as though they are a bit glistening. You can do all the intestine which has been done with this gloss varnish, because the blood for the blood god is gloss as well, so it doesn't matter if you go over the blood for the blood god, as it keeps it all shiny by using the gloss varnish anyway, so that doesn't matter too much. Also using a little bit on the guy's tongue there, so that's coming out of his mouth, and you want that to look as though it's glistening as well. Like so. And that is the finished insides. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.